Aloha mai kako. Welcome to another episode of the Moana Nui podcast. Thank you all for joining us. I am really excited about today's podcast. We have a very special guest, one of the first musicians we're having on the Moana Nui podcast. His name is Jason Chu, and he is a rapper, poet, activist on a mission to speak hope and healing in a broken world. As a solo artist, he blends introspective lyricism with high energy bangers and thoughtfully crafted spoken word poetry. Jason's music has been seen and heard on Wu Assassins on Netflix and Warrior seasons 1 and 2, which is one of our favorite shows. He has shared poetry at the Obama White House, been featured in the Chinese American Museum of LA, and presented at the Getty Center, Flushing Town Hall, the Holden Performing Arts Center, and the Museum of Chinese in America. As an Asian on Asian American identity and hip-hop culture, Jason has spoken and led workshops at the University of Pennsylvania, Dragon Con, ArtCenter, Stanford, NYU, Yale, and beyond. So as you can see, he has had quite an impressive career, and I'm really excited to have him on the show tonight. In addition, I also have my friend and very special co-host, Dana Morgan. She is a photographer, a cosplayer, a lover of all things geek, and has graciously made the connection between me and Jason tonight. So it was, a no-brainer that I have her here on the podcast tonight too. So let's bring them both on.
What's up,
guys? How's it going today?
It's good. It's almost the holidays, almost, just decelerating. It's been an incredible year. I'm definitely ready to rest, definitely ready to recharge for next year. So yeah, how y'all doing?
I'm doing good. I'm hanging in. Kind of the same thing, like looking forward to slowing things down a little bit, reflecting. There's been a lot of things that have been focused on the bad of 2020, but just like over this past week, even on my Facebook and stuff, I'm like, okay, let's tell me one thing that has been good that you feel proud of your accomplishment in 2020. Let's change the, the perspective and the mindset with that. So it's kind of where I've been focused at the end of the year. It's my thing, like kind of capturing the good, the bad, the lessons learned, the things you can change, the things you can let go of. And stuff like that. How about you, Dana?
Same here. It's just like just taking each day at a time. And with this pandemic, it really has shown how we should value our bonds and develop the bonds that we establish, and really invest in the ones that are more of our board or the people that will help bring us to our next level. So I think, as my grandma would say, this was a year of purging. You got to purge your friends. Some people will go from associates to friends. Some go from friends to associates. Some may be only seasonal and have done their season, and it's time for them to exit out of your life. And then there's some that are lifetime. So it's one of those you have to reevaluate everything and put those people around you that's going to help push you to your next level. So
absolutely,
that's been my reflection for 2020.
That's awesome. Sage advice from our beautiful elders.
Yes.
All righty, so let's get this started. So one of the things that I love to do with the Moana Nui podcast is understanding the origins of our guests, kind of to help with the conversation. So where were you born and raised, and what is like your ethnic background?
Yeah, I was born in Chicago, Illinois. I grew up on the East Coast. I grew up in kind of between Delaware and Connecticut. And, my parents are both Chinese American. So my dad was born in Thailand and my mom was born in Malaysia. But they're both, Chinese American. Yeah.
That's awesome. Thailand is one of my favorite places. Well, yeah, one of the favorites that I've been overseas. It's an amazing country, a vibrant culture, something that I definitely would love to see more here in America.
Exactly.
Yeah, Thailand's got really great street culture, really
Yes.
great food and a lot of beautiful things.
Yes, the street carts. I remember, yeah, I would be traveling with coworkers and they'd be like shying away from, the food and stuff. I'm like, are you kidding me? It's the best stuff right here, right here. Like it doesn't get better than this. Like,
Well, I
yeah,
feel like America just got really bad street like food and culture. You know what I'm saying? Like America doesn't really have anything. Like they're food trucks, but they're that's a little too bougie. You know what I'm saying? Food trucks, you basically might as well go to a restaurant.
right.
But I feel like all over Asia or Europe or Africa and Caribbean, street food is such an important part of culture and of livelihood. And we really see that in Thailand, definitely.
Yeah. And a
Yeah.
lot of people sleep on like you said, the street food, because a lot of those um, street merchants and things like that, their food is recognized by a lot of food critics
Hmm.
and they get awards and stuff like that. And when you go there, it's like people may walk past them, but it's like, no, this place just got Michelin stars and stuff. If,
Exactly.
don't sleep on the grandpa right there cooking that food. It's
Yeah,
like,
there's a hawker stall in Singapore that has a
hmm
Michelin star. Exactly.
yeah.
That's so awesome. Yeah, I just all the cultures overseas. So this is like the other ways for me to like bring those cultures, to people through this podcast. Hopefully, like
Hmm.
you can't. Nothing beats the real thing, and feet on street, and just being in the presence of that culture and immersing yourself. But if you can give them a little taste, maybe folks will be, once all this travel restrictions and we get straight with COVID and everything, maybe people will
Yeah.
want to explore the world a little more and get some more perspective.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope so. I definitely feel like, uh, after we're able somehow to push through this, vaccination is good, but really nothing replaces just good public safety, right?
Yeah,
Public health and public
absolutely.
safety.
Yep.
So if people can just get themselves under control, make sure that they look out for each other, there's a lot of beautiful things going on out there in the world right now.
Yes.
Definitely. And it's so great to have, this technology that allows us to connect, even though we can't do it in person. But
Hmm.
I've, just been able to make connections with people who I probably wouldn't have, spoken with before. So it's been great. Yeah. So one of the first questions we have is, how did you get started in music and who were your inspirations and influences as you came up in music?
Yeah. So for me, I purely got started in music, just listening to music, listening to hip hop, listening to rap music with my friends. I had buddies at school or whatever. We'd download music, we'd share it with each other, and we just kind of, of course, you hear what you hear, and then I think if you really love something, you eventually want to try your own hand at it, right? Like I think that most fans of something, right? Whether it's cosplay or whether it's music or whether it's fashion, whatever it is, if you enjoy something enough, at some point you want to stop just consuming and you want to start creating too, right? That's part of the natural sort of cycle of life. So we would get together, after school or whatever it was, and we'd be freestyling or we'd be writing some raps, and they were all awful. But what it led to was just this real sense of, if I really love this thing, I don't want to just watch other people participate in it. I really want to be a part of what's going on, part of the whole process. So that got me into it, and then I went to college, and I was fortunate enough to go to a university where we had resources like a recording studio, or we had like a battle of the bands, or get opportunities to perform on campus. So when I was in college, I really learned a lot about engineering music and performing music and what went into a good performance. Um, and very DIY. It was always very, hey, we want to do this thing, so let's just make a shot at it.
Absolutely. That sounds awesome. So did you have, who are your, I'll say top three hip hop artists when you were coming up?
Man, top three. I'll say like, I was always really drawn to like people who were very lyrical, people who had really, really good flows. Um, so I'll say like the first three that just kind of come to mind are Kendrick Lamar and Lupe Fiasco and Eminem. Right? Like just people who were very dense lyrically, who were saying interesting things, who always sounded like they had fun writing and making music. And that was what I was really attracted to, and that was the kind of artist that I've always wanted to be, is somebody who's saying interesting things in an interesting way.
Gotcha.
Very nice. Now, Jason, you always connect your audience to Delaware, where you grew up as a kid. How did you find your voice in music along with your voice in social issues while growing up there?
I mean, honestly, I really didn't. It was after I left the state, It was after I was out for college and moving around the world. So I always say, like, my foundation and the basis of, the values I was given come from my time at home, my time with my parents, my time, kind of experiencing the world in this little, like, corner of it. But so much of it, I think, was, when you get out of the state, you get out, right? All of us, wherever we grow up, at some point, you get out of your little pocket, whether that means you just go, 2 blocks over, or whether that means you go across the world. You realize that there's other things out there, right? And then how you respond to that really, I think, defines, it is always defined by where you come from, whether that's, what you represent or how you move through the world. So for me, it was, understanding more and more of what's going on in society and in culture, and saying, hey, the things about my upbringing that I consider good and positive and helpful for others. It says I gotta speak up about, race and justice and equality. It says I've gotta land on this side of questions about queerness, or, like, trans identity, things like that, poverty, and so I think that I'll always credit, as it were, like, small town values for leading me to where I went. But it was really the connection of what I was taught in my, like, little kind of suburban, almost rural upbringing, and then connecting that to these issues that I started encountering, not just in newspapers, but, friendships and relationships and communities that I was exposed to as I was moving out throughout the world.
Okay, very nice. Now, more and more in the community is using the term of API, Asian Pacific Islanders, but we often see the community siloed into North Asians, South Asians, and Pacific Islanders. How can we unify the API community beyond these silos, and what steps are you making to help close those gaps?
Right. I mean, I think for me, so much of it is knowing our history. If you understand history, then you understand why, like, Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, Pacific Islanders all come together as this, like, sort of community together. It's really traces its roots to 1969, 1972, a certain movement in civil rights and in academia, where our different people groups, we said, hey, it's better for us to stick together. You look out, you see, Chicano, Hispanic folks, they've got a unifying narrative that they can use to push and represent themselves. Native folks, similarly. Black folks, similarly. For us, we were very split apart. Filipinos were one thing, Japanese were another thing, Chinese were another thing, Native Pacific Islanders were another thing. So what brought us together was us saying, hey, we got to stick up. We got to band together. We got to stick up for each other, not because all of our issues are identical, but because, there needs to be. So really, I think the number one mistake is thinking, oh, I don't feel like this label of Asian American really affects me, so I'm just going to opt out. Which, that works great until there's something that you need a lot of people for, until you need lobbying, until you need, like we're seeing in Georgia right now, there's this really important Senate runoff vote, and you can't just go person by person, right, and be like, hey, like, what do you feel? As an Asian American community, we're mobilizing along with the Black communities mobilizing, and in the Black community, it's not like, oh, were you Black, or did your parents come from Africa? It's no, like, look, this is something that affects all of us. Who goes to the Senate is going to affect all of us. So to me, that's my understanding of, this whole Asian American identity thing. And that's why I'm so passionate about it, because I think, we all agree that there's so many things going on in culture, going on in our American society that are not equitable. And we're not, if we all just fight our own little piece of the battle, right? And we all just focus 100% of our energies and wear ourselves out fighting for our specific little corner of that. Our energy is much better spent banding together and pushing forward certain things that we agree are unified goals.
Exactly. Now, you released a song, All You Can Eat, at the earlier part of the pandemic in the United States. What inspired you to write this song to support the API restaurant community?
Right. Because, even before the lockdown, Asian American restaurants, specifically Chinese American, Chinatown restaurants, were showing a 40 to 80% decrease in their gross receipts week by week. Because we know, right, with COVID, there's been a lot of anti-Asian racism. This year, it's been ugly in a lot of ways, a lot of ways against in a lot of directions. And certainly one thing that surfaced is the reality of how anti-Asian xenophobia is still profitable, right? For a lot of people, it's good business for them to scapegoat Asian Americans, and that boils over not just to East Asians, not just Chinese, but to South Asians, to Pacific Islanders, to all kinds of folks, right? And so, anything I do, I always want it to have some greater purpose. I think it's always better when we can hit a couple targets all at once, right? So, my friends run this incredible restaurant, Hop Woo, in Los Angeles, Chinatown. They've been there, for a long time, holding it down on the street, and so they let us shoot there, and really tried to bring awareness to some folks about the ways that they are struggling and suffering. And they employ multiple people. They help feed a lot of households. They're well known. It's a small mom and pop business, and already we know something like 60% to 80% of small businesses that shutter or that closed temporarily during this pandemic are not going to reopen. Right. And then add on top of that the increased anti-Chinese, anti-Asian xenophobia. And, I just think anything that we can do to make their lives a little easier, that just helps all of us,
Exactly.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that I kind of did something similar at the beginning of the pandemic. So I have a clothing line and, I have all this material and stuff around, but I have no events to go sell my stuff to, right? So I was like, well, let me grab some of this stuff. Let me start making masks. It helped me with my own anxiety, right? And then, I did this whole effort where it was if you buy a mask, a matching one will be donated to an organization in need, right? So
that's great.
I really like that you also, are very community minded about, all of the things that you do. I think it's very important for people to understand the value of that community, because sometimes I think we take it for granted, that we could be out here in the wind. But some folks may not know it if they have not traveled far enough yet, right? Some people never leave their town. When I moved here to DC area, there were people who didn't even know other parts of Maryland, and they're from Maryland. And so I'm like, totally. But don't you know? So until you travel outside of that comfort zone, you can never really understand the perspective of someone who is away from their stronghold, I guess would be a good way to put that. So, I hope more folks, at least in listening to you and to other guests on the show, kind of, understand that these are things that we really need to be grateful for. These are things that are not artificial, right? Well, we live in a very capitalistic society, right? So we're consume. But the true things, I think I'm hoping a lot of us are realizing is to be grateful for, the stuff that cannot be consumed, right? I don't know, maybe it's just me.
I definitely agree with that.
Yeah, I think, the irony of the pandemic is we can keep buying stuff, right? We can keep buying everything, but you're realizing it's people and it's experiences that really matter. Um, I mean, I don't know. It's just so hard for me to see how America's handling this pandemic because, I see on my timeline, I'd say like, most of the people in my circles, not even my close circle, right? Most of the people in my circle are pretty responsible, pretty caring.
Hmm.
Even if they're, whatever, leaning in whatever direction, they're still going to care about others. But I just still see, even in my curated timelines, some people going out. There's a huge surge in California right now,
Yeah.
still going out and having gatherings and having this and that. And I'm just like, man, I don't know. I don't know. Like, I know what's wrong with this country. We're very selfish, right? I don't know how we're
Titles.
going to fix it, right? I don't know how we're going to fix it because if you still think that your birthday party is worth is what is like special exactly like right, Dana, it's entitled. Like, if you think you're entitled to your birthday party and everyone else should just not have their birthday, like, that's just stupid to me. And
Right.
not stupid again, but not stupid in the sense of like, oh, I don't understand why you would do that. Stupid in the sense of like, I understand exactly why you do that. I don't know. I'm just saying you're absolutely right. Like, it is people and its experiences and its culture and all these things that are valuable. But, how do we get people to value them in a way that preserves them rather than valuing them in a way that just takes them in for themselves? And then, it's just like Napoleon stealing artifacts from Egypt. Like, Napoleon thought Egypt was valuable. You dig what I'm saying? Napoleon thought Egypt was mad valuable. That did not help Egypt, not at all. You
Right.
know what I'm saying? So how do we one way that I see the conversation being approached online is, yeah, we know y'all love our culture. Black culture has never been, or Asian culture has never been not allowed at the table for, but it's exactly what you're saying. It's they love our culture for its consumption. They don't
Hmm.
necessarily love our communities for their furtherance. So how do
Yes.
we tie the one to the other? You know what I'm saying? I don't
Exactly.
know.
And how you were saying with the pandemic, it was just interesting how people were demanding the restaurants to be open, the nail salons to be open. So most of the people that are the workers in those industries are minorities,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
especially in nail salons, that's primarily predominantly Asian.
Hmm.
And but then at the same time, you're spewing xenophobic statements or saying China, the China virus and things like that. But yet, you want that, and at the same time, same thing with the Hispanic culture. It's like you're all about Cinco de Mayo and drinking and everything else, not knowing what Cinco de Mayo stood for, but you're
Right.
all about that. But then if we take away the guacamole, we take away the tacos, we take away, and I think the best part is like if you, as much as you dislike, you know, all the minorities of this country, if you take away everything they contributed to this world, how far back into Stone Age are we going to go?
Oh, they
Hmm.
would go. Not us. Let's correct that.
But it's like you said, it's that entitlement that I want what you can give me, but I just
Hmm.
don't. Like I said, I want what you can give, but I don't want your struggles.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
I want everything that's comfortable, but I don't want to be held accountable for my role in your struggle, right? Like there's that part too.
Yeah.
So so interesting. We could go down so many rabbit holes with
Hmm.
that. So let's talk about another kind of struggle. So many creators and artists struggle with acceptance of their work and the challenges of balancing their career aspirations with family life. You talked a little bit about this in Influencers track.
Hmm.
Um, Here's my question: how have you learned to maintain balance in your life, and like what kinds of things do you, what kind of methods do you use to just keep it all straight?
I mean, that's a great question. It's a constantly moving target. I feel like because it's, like over these holidays, I'm definitely looking forward to getting a rest. I've been pushing really hard the last month or two, pretty nonstop. I think I'm getting better at listening to my body, listening to when I'm, sort of on the way down versus when I'm like good to run. Um, but the biggest thing I think is just having good people around me, having the right team around me who are like, running smooth, running effective, able to, able to really take things off my plate in a way to where, when I'm feeling a certain way, they'll help me notice it, and they'll, it's not all on my shoulders. So like,
Right.
if I don't do anything, then it's gone. Like, no, we've got protocols in place that let me ease back while continuing the movement forward, So I think that's super important. Um, yeah, I mean, it really does have to be a team effort. Like, everybody I know who's successful, there's two common denominators, at least. One is they know how to work really hard, and they are very hardworking, and they're very hungry. And the second is they have a team around them that they can trust. It could be a large team, it could be a small team, but they have people that they really trust to hand things off to and to delegate to. And I think that I've learned a lot from being around some of my friends who have very successful careers, seeing how they conduct themselves and then seeing how they run the people around them or how they run their team and trust the people around them is really important.
Yeah, that's great advice. And I think it's something that I've been trying to work on myself too, because, you can do a lot by yourself, but man, that burnout is right there. It's like, it's right on the cusp. Like, you just got to get that team, like somebody tag it, but I mean, building that trust it can be hard too, right? Like, especially when you're first getting started, because like this thing that you've created, whatever that might be, right? It's your baby. Like, and only I know about it right now. And like, what if they tear it apart? It's the whole, like, the feedback thing, which is like inevitable. So, but just having that support system. And I feel like as Indigenous peoples, like, that is a big part of who we are, the community aspect, having everyone understand their role in it. And that it is like a shared success, right? Like, we're all working and grinding, right? But it's not all about, oh, Jason's going to get more shine than, I don't know, Alan or somebody, like that. It's like, yes, somebody can have success. It doesn't mean that it's to your detriment, right? Like, you should be happy for them. What can you learn from them? Like, can you guys collaborate on something, right? Like, change that mindset. I don't know. I think 2021 is going to be like I want to help people to get there, because I see so much talent out here, but they're like in their own way. I don't know.
Yeah. It's been ingrained too much in our, I think, in the creative culture of the crab in the bucket status. That you got to pull each other down in order for you to raise yourself up.
Right.
And we see it, and media has not helped to decrease that detriment within the artist community, because as fans and everything else, they're constantly putting out there that person is pitched against this person's pitch. And instead, it's like, we should be, like you said, building each other up, no matter whether it's musically, if it's, photography, if it's any kind of artistic format, whether you're a writer or anything like that. And it's amazing what, because I love to see it within the indie comic industry, how all the creatives will be like, okay, this person is getting ready to do a Kickstarter for their new comic, and they have no ties to that comic, but they're supporting and getting their fans to support that comic and say, this is amazing, the artwork is done by this person, and then they do the same to each other. And it's like, okay, if we could get the other communities to kind of do the same, with it could be such a beautiful thing that we could really elevate the diversity and in the creative world a lot more than following a directive that is given to us.
Yeah, I've seen that in the indie comics Kickstarters. It's been very interesting because there is a whole unique culture to indie comics on Kickstarter. I've had a couple of friends who are sort of self-publishing through Kickstarter, and it's working really well. They're getting like increased orders,
Yep.
right, from like issue to issue, which you don't really see in a lot of other Kickstarter kind of communities. So there does seem to be something really special about the comics world and the way people are supporting each other there. And
Yes.
that kind of mutual aid is exactly what we're looking for, right, in all of our communities and our ventures. But I think you're absolutely right, Moana. It happens right when we do it genuinely, supporting instead of supporting each other like, oh, is this a collaboration? In rap, there's so many times when it's a collaboration, but it's like, yo, I'm gonna, where's the money in it for me, or where's the clout in it for me, versus like, yo, here's a cool project. I think my people are gonna like this. It's gonna add value to them. They can help support it. When it's organic like that, it works so much better, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's beautiful that you say that, because you definitely demonstrate that example of that, working genuinely with other artists. I mean, you have songs like, Yellow Diddy and Dojo with Alan Z. I mean, you're both rap artists and you could easily come at each other, but you came together, not only one song, but multiple songs together. You've also worked with Chow Mein. You've worked with several other artists, and because it's so genuine, it flows so well together. Hearing the two of you working together versus a lot of times you hear songs that it sounds like it's forced, the collaboration versus it being a genuine, because when it's genuine, it's like the energy and how you talk with each other and everything, and it just makes it mesh really well.
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with like that feeling of shared ownership, to like, this is our, our magic that we get to share with the world. I mean, like, yeah, don't get me wrong, bills got to be paid. We all got to eat. We all got to put a roof over our head. That's just life. But you just don't want it to be like I feel like a lot of the big companies or the big artists or whatever, they focus on the bottom line, right? Like, oh, we can't do that project because it's not going to make us dollars, and and they focus so much on the money that they lose the value that the project actually brings. And that's why I think the Kickstarter community and the independent comics community is amazing. I mean, let's be honest, we're keeping the comic medium alive in a lot of ways, so shout outs to the indie community. We love y'all.
Yeah, I mean, right, there's always these rumors that Marvel, Disney or Warner Brothers is going to shut down the comics arms of their companies, right? The publishing arms, because you make so much more money off of an A tier movie than you do off of even what's a good print run these days in comics? Like 20,000, 25,000, maybe 40,000 copies. Like, you're gonna make so much more money off of the IP than an individual floppy. But doing that, really, that's cultural appropriation. That's like taking something from somewhere, but not giving back to the people who helped flourish and help build it up, right? So, and I see the same in music circles, like, yeah, like, these indie artists, we might make, 50, 60,000, 20,000, $80,000 a year. But if we don't get support, there's a lot that gets lost, right? Like, sure, Drake is still going to be out there doing his thing. Bigger name artists are going to be out there doing their thing. But there's something that we gain by having like a rich underground, independent, like, communities, local communities, that are putting out music. In some cases the quality level might be a little lower. In some cases the quality level is just as high as a major label signed artist. There's other things we don't have, but it is important to continue supporting that, because those are the people who are in your neighborhoods, creating from that perspective.
And it's more relatable that way. I feel like something is lost when it's like, like this Congress with this whole bill, right? Like, they're so out of touch with, the general public. They're out for their own needs, which is, mirrors a lot of big business and things like that. And that's why over time it just gets watered down. They keep repeating the same stuff because they don't have creativity anymore. They're so focused on the dollar that they need to pay tribute to the source and, where they're pulling all of this stuff from. It's frustrating, but it is what it is, right?
Yes.
So what
That's
has
why we
been
have to
your,
vote.
oh, go ahead, Dana, sorry.
No, I was just saying that's why you have to vote. You got to vote for the people that will have that voice for us.
Yeah.
Especially in Georgia right now.
Yes.
Yes.
Early voting is still going in Georgia, so if you haven't voted.
Yes, so get out there. So what has been your biggest struggle as an Asian American creator or artist?
I think my biggest struggle is really first and foremost that, as an Asian American individual, much less creative artist, whatever, we're really not taught our history, right? We're really not taught where we come from, right? I think that's part of why, for me, it was really hip hop that gave me a sense of history and heritage and place. Because for me, as an Asian American, I grew up, some of the basics, but honestly, most of what we grow up learning is either family history or is, a very whitewashed colonialized mentality of, what it means to be Asian, what it means to be Asian in America, or what it means to be Asian in general, right? And I think that that's where I've learned so much from hip hop. About hip hop teaches, if you really pay attention, I'm not even talking about like woke TED Talk hip hop, you know what I'm saying? I'm even saying things like Migos, Lil Baby, Future, you know what I'm saying? Even like Nicki, like, all these Rico Nasty, like all these artists, not even explicitly, but just on such a deep level, show you a different vision of the world. They show you that there's a whole other world out there than what you might learn in school, right? Like you just listen to Jay-Z, you listen to a Jay-Z record, you're going to hear references to all this stuff that you never heard about in school. And it's going to tell you on so many levels, there's other histories and there's other ways of being successful, of being rich, of being well educated, of being well spoken, of being, whatever it is that you think is good. There's ways to do that that are different than what you learn in like, a white school system. So I think that for me, when I saw that in hip hop, that's when I went, all right, what does that mean for me as Asian American? And that's when I dived into my history and was really able to learn a lot about, figures that are role models for me, that are ancestors and elders to me that I would not have even sought out or thought existed were it not for this awakening to, there's something else out there beyond white supremacist and white normative culture. So for me, that's been the biggest struggle. The biggest struggle, and I mean, I will say this: the biggest struggle has been within myself, right, against these colonizing forces, right. And I'm not saying that like, oh man, your biggest enemy is yourself. Like, no, the enemy is whiteness or white supremacy. But I'm saying that before we fight racism outside, we got to fight it inside first. You know what I'm saying? Like it's like Kendrick said on Black of the Berry. Like if in my heart, and I see this happening a lot in the Asian American Pacific Islander community, right? In our hearts, we don't actually love we don't know what it means to be Asian or Pacific Islander, so we don't love that. And so, we talk a lot. We talk a big game about representation. We talk a big game about, we need to be in these positions. But we don't even know when we get in those positions what to do because we follow no revolutionary examples. So for me, that's been like kind of the biggest and most difficult journey of my life. And then now that I'm finding myself at a certain place on it, a lot has opened up from there, I think. Yeah.
That's awesome. I love that. And so what part of your culture would you like to see expressed more in mainstream media?
Yeah, I think just, exactly on this same topic, like there's, 170 years of Asian American role models. Like not even immigrants. I'm just talking about Asian Americans. And I think, like people are always like, "Oh man, that show's set in cowboy times. Why would there be an Asian?" Well, there was mad Asians here. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
In cowboy times, like a
Exactly.
lot of, I mean, definitely we're talking about Native Hawaiians. If we're talking about Chinese and Japanese,
Yeah.
there's like been people there, right? People were like, "Oh, that's set during World War II." So no, like there were our people there. You know what I'm saying? And shouts to Marvel for often doing this right, because Marvel does at least try to do it right. Like you look at Captain America, the first one, right? They had what's his name, Kenneth. Um, I forget what the actor's name is, but they had one of the Howling Commandos, Nick Fury, all that. You know what I'm saying? The Howling Commandos was Asian, right? And they always Marvel usually gets a little more right, but I think that what just pop culture needs to put out there. And I think again, before even broad pop culture does this, what Asian American culture needs to do is understand that we've always had a stake in this country, right? When we talk about Asian American heritage, we don't need to talk about Asia. We can talk about America. You know what I'm saying? I think a lot of people. This is one thing I'll say. A lot of Asian Americans, when we look to heritage, we automatically, because of racism, we automatically look to Asia, right?
Yes.
So it's like, oh, as an Asian American, right? What's my heritage? Oh, let me think about some Chinese shit. Let me think about some, Filipino shit. Let me think about some Thai shit. Let me think about some, Tongan shit. And that's great. Like shout out to all that. But the reality is that we can also look at distinctly American stories, right? There are, whether you're talking soldiers, whether you're talking criminals, whether you're talking, um, you know, uh, beautiful women, whether you're talking actors, there have been Asian Americans who have been all those things for over 100 years. And so I think, it's 2020. In 1920, there absolutely were Asian American actors and dancers and outlaws and, warriors and all these things. So I think we really need to stop thinking that Asian American heritage, right, means, oh, let's eat eat rice and use chopsticks and talk about, the zodiac. You know what I'm saying? Like all of which is real, like, all real,
Stereotypes.
but right, but there's also baseball and basketball
Yeah.
and Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts, and there's also all of that. And I think that we really, 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 again, before anyone else realizes that, we need to realize that,
Yes.
because we need to stop orientalizing ourselves and saying, "Oh, my heritage is Asian. Oh, my heritage is Asian American." You dig?
Yes.
Yeah. I think that's the uniqueness of kind of being an Indigenous person, right? Like you have like the roots part, and then you have like the American part. Which unfortunately, a lot of those are things that they hide from textbooks, right? So,
Yes.
you have to be willing to go out there and do your own research and learn more, like, especially now in terms of like, just like negative perspectives on, like how, they like to say that like, well, Indigenous peoples didn't really serve this country, or in any given way, right? We're always like minimized. But then like I look back just to my own family, like as an example, I'm like, my father was a veteran, my grandfather was a veteran, my great great grandfather was a veteran, like Vietnam, Korean War, World War I, World War II, like, and then of course the own Hawaiian struggle and the overtaking, the overthrow of the monarchy. So like, please don't even get me started with like the sacrifice that Indigenous peoples have done for this country, so yeah, a lot of those threads just kind of fire me up, and
Well, it's because when you see those threads, it's because people have focused on so much of what they learned or what they chose to learn, either from growing up in their own community or what they are fed elementary school through high school. But then you realize, I mean, everything from Black history, Black history had to be put into the schools and had to go through that process. And now API history is slowly trickling in, but it's not as well versed just as African American history. It's like bits and pieces are given. So then when unfortunately so many, when they become adults, they just think everything that they were told is,
It's all.
golden. And
Yeah.
then when someone, which always throws me off, is when someone of that culture is correcting them. No, no, no. And such and such book, it's like, no, no, no. How about you talk to my grandma? How y'all talk about my grandma? They can tell you that didn't happen.
I know that's right. Yeah, that gets on my nerves, especially in Hawaii. And tourists be like trying to tell you about your own culture. I'm like, hold up, can we just check yourself right now? Like, get out of here.
Or even the colorism that people, that established, especially for, Moana will know for the Hawaiian culture. It's like, they know from media that Asians, Chinese are supposed to look this way. Japanese are supposed to look this way. Hawaiians supposed to look this way. So then when they see someone like myself or look at Moana, they're like, you're not Hawaiian. You're this, you're that. It's like, not according to my birth certificate. And then it's like, have you ever gone to Hawaii? That most people in Hawaii are my complexion or darker.
Yes.
And but yet you have this vision that it's supposed to be that. Or my favorite is, correcting people of, that are of, South Asian culture, that they're not Asian. And it's like, my best friend's Filipino. He's very much Asian, but he's not light complected, that you have this association that, it has to be pale skin. All Asians are pale skin. So anyone that's darker than that, then, they're not Asian. So it's like, no, that's not how it is.
Right. Yeah.
Go visit some communities or leave the country and understand that that's not how it works.
Yeah, because if you look back historically, like a lot of people don't even realize that there was a Pacific slave trade. Like if you look up Blackbirding, indigenous people were stolen from islands there to work on, plantations in Fiji. And so that's why if you look at Fijians now, they have the darkest features. They align most closely to what we see as Africans. And there's a reason for that. Even in Filipino culture, right? You have like lighter skinned ones who are like me and like my grandfather. Well, I'm light skinned because I'm here on the mainland without the sun. But then you have like the negrito, which are, like the more dark skinned ones. So it's like in any culture, right? Like one face does not represent the entire culture. There are, you go along a spectrum, right? And it's still the same people. It's just different shades of brown beauty, so. Yeah, colorism is an interesting conversation.
Yes.
I mean, isn't there also like darker skinned Chinese people, Jason?
Yeah, there's definitely, so on so many levels, right? Like just geographically, right? There's Chinese folks in different regions, and so that certainly happens. And then you also, right, Chinese. So I'm Han Chinese, right, which is sort of the dominating ethnic phenotype. But there's 60 plus minority groups and recognized ethnic groups in China. And I think, what a lot of people don't realize is that there's very distinct phenotypes even within Chinese culture. And so much of that is not understood, right? And I think that it's really important to preserve this understanding of, I mean, in the same way that not all Asians are alike, not even all Chinese people are alike. Right. And pushing for that further understanding, in the same way that you can look at somebody of Ethiopian or Eritrean descent,
right,
and they're going to look very different from like West Africans, right? But all of that again in America's simplified racial kind of paradigm it all becomes just black, right? Or similarly, it all becomes just like Chinese or Asian. Um, and and again, it's people gotta we gotta preserve the breadth of diversity of our communities while also
United.
in making sure, yeah, while also uniting and making sure that we can come together and making sure that, because when I hear very often, like, you even hear, I've seen on online discourse, you hear, oh, folks whose parents came from Africa in the last 50 years don't understand blackness because your families didn't experience slavery. And I also hear, like, oh, a lot of East Asians, if I'm like Vietnamese, I really want to distance myself from East Asian communities, and that's helpful to a degree, but at a certain point, you know whether you're from Myanmar or you're a rich Chinese person, that racist is going to look at you and treat you the same way. So we're fighting these same battles, not because of us, but because of what's being put on us. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Mac Ginny says, "Speak on it, bro."
So Mac.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, I think we're coming up to the end of the hour, and I definitely want to
Wow.
respect your time. I know it's been an amazing chat. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, hopefully I can come back sometime in the new year.
Yes.
Let's keep this going. We got plenty more to talk on. We got a lot more things going on.
Jason Chu concert.
Yeah. We're out here.
Oh, awesome. So where can folks find you online if they want to check out your music and support?
Yes, please. Just Jason Chu everywhere. JASONCHU. I'm at Jason Chu Music on Instagram, on Facebook, like all social media. I'm at Jason Chu Music on all streaming services. My new single Splash just dropped today. Please run up the numbers on that. It's my favorite music. But just look for Jason Chu or at Jason Chu Music anywhere, and tap in with me, stay connected. Any friend of Moana's, any friend of Dana's is a friend of mine.
That's awesome. We love you.
Oh yeah, there we go. That's the record.
Yeah. Let me get Dana on the.
Yes.
Yeah, there you go.
His last album, Living Room. So you could definitely purchase a copy if you're interested. And great music to chill out, definitely connect to and everything. So yes.
That's awesome. I was definitely listening to some of the tracks on there before. This is dope. So Dana, what about you? Where can folks find you online?
You can find me both on Facebook and Instagram and as Danique Events. You can see a lot of my photography that with me with cosplayers, a lot of the con community and things like that. So of course, this year there haven't been any cons, but it's been virtual. So, but we definitely hope after starting with 2021, we'll start coming back, and those that attend MomoCon, DragonCon, any of those, you'll be able to see me again behind the camera.
Awesome. Thanks, Dana. And Dana will also be actually a guest on the podcast in the future. So I'm looking forward to talking with her more about her work in the cosplay community. You can find me at The Real Life Moana on IG, and then at Moana McAdams on Twitter and Facebook as well, right here on the podcast, moanamcadams.com, where you can purchase our comic, The Wildcard Chronicles, check out my children's book, Fishing Day with Papa Ray, and check out our swag. So thank you guys for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed it. Please connect with our guests, connect with us. Give us feedback. Let us know what you think. Let us know what you want to hear about. And we appreciate y'all. Happy holidays. Please stay safe, stay healthy, stay social distance, wear your masks. We're all in this together. And we love y'all. So take care, guys. Aloha, malama pono, ahui ho.